"Don't take Papa away," the little girl begged. But the sheriff's gun ended his life in front of her. The courthouse steps felt cold against Eden's legs, but she couldn't move. Mud caked her blue dress, where she'd fallen running from the house. Her small hands lay still in her lap, fingers stained with something she didn't want to remember. The sun beat down on the stone steps, but inside her chest, everything felt frozen. People walked past on the sidewalk. Their voices sounded far away, like they were speaking underwater. A woman carrying groceries glanced at her, then looked away quickly. A man in overalls crossed to the other side of the street. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked why a 12-year-old girl sat alone outside the courthouse with blood under her fingernails. The heavy wooden doors behind her stayed closed. Sheriff Calloway was inside somewhere, probably washing his hands, probably cleaning his gun. Eden pressed her lips together and tasted salt. She hadn't cried yet. Crying would make it real. Footsteps approached, slow and careful. Eden knew those footsteps. Her grandmother's worn boots made soft scraping sounds on concrete. The old woman's breathing came in short gasps like she'd been running, but grandmother never ran anywhere. Mercy, child. Eden didn't look up. If she looked up, she'd have to see grandmother's face. She'd have to see the knowing in her eyes. He said Papa was stealing. The words came out flat and empty. Eden's voice sounded strange to her own ears, like it belonged to someone else. "Sheriff Calloway lies." Grandmother's voice shook with something that might have been rage or might have been fear. Eden finally lifted her head. Grandmother's face was white as cemetery marble, her hands trembling like autumn leaves. "Papa's blood is still on the porch." The words hung in the air between them. Grandmother's knees cracked as she lowered herself down onto the stone steps. Her arms came around Eden's shoulders, pulling her close against a chest that smelled like lavender soap and old grief. "I know, baby girl. I know." Eden let herself be held, but her eyes stayed fixed on the courthouse windows above. Behind one of those windows, Sheriff Calloway sat at his desk. Sunlight caught the silver badge pinned to his shirt, making it flash like a warning signal, like a promise, like a target. The courthouse clock chimed twice. Eden counted the bells and memorized the sound. Someday, when she was bigger, when she was stronger, she would come back to these steps, and Sheriff Calloway would finally pay. Eden's cloth moved in perfect circles across the dining table. Same motion, same pressure, same rhythm she'd used for the past 3 years. Every table got wiped twice. Every surface had to be spotless. Control was everything now. Control kept the anger buried deep where it belonged. The bell above the door chimed. Heavy boots crossed the checkerboard floor. Eden didn't need to look up to know who it was. She'd memorized that walk 17 years ago. Sheriff Calloway moved more slowly now, his belly straining against his uniform shirt. But the badge still caught the fluorescent lights, the same way it had caught the courthouse sunlight. He chose the corner booth like always. Same seat, same time, same order. Eden folded her cleaning cloth and walked over, coffee pot in hand. His hair had gone white at the temples, and deep lines carved paths around his eyes, but his hands looked the same. The hands that had pulled the trigger. "Coffee, Sheriff?" Black, like always. Eden turned the ceramic mug right side up and filled it to the brim. Steam rose between them like smoke from a funeral pyre. "You remember how I like it?" "I remember everything." Her voice came out steady as bedrock. No tremor, no crack. She'd practiced this moment in her mirror at home, rehearsed every word until they felt like stones in her mouth. Calloway studied her face for a few seconds, searching for something familiar, but 17 years, and a woman's features where a child's used to be made her invisible to him. Good memory. Most people forget. Some things stick. Eden set the coffee pot on the table and watched him lift the mug to his lips. His throat worked as he swallowed. The same throat that had laughed when her father fell. The same mouth that had called her father a thief as his blood soaked into the porch boards. Tastes perfect. Just how I like it. "I aim to please." She collected the sugar dispenser from his table, though it didn't need refilling. Her fingers brushed against the surface where his hand had rested. Still warm, still human. Soon enough, that warmth would turn cold. Soon enough, Sheriff Calloway would learn what it felt like to lose everything. Eden walked back to the kitchen, already planning his ruin. The attic stairs creaked under Eden's weight. Each step groaned like the old house was warning her to turn back. Grandmother had been dead 3 months now, leaving behind a lifetime of secrets packed in boxes and hidden in corners. Eden pushed open the narrow door at the top of the stairs. Dust particles danced in golden afternoon light, streaming through a single window. The air tasted stale and forgotten. Cardboard boxes lined the walls like tombstones, each one holding pieces of the past that someone had decided to bury. Eden moved carefully between them, reading labels in grandmother's careful handwriting, Christmas decorations, wedding china, summer clothes. Then tucked behind a trunk of quilts, she found it. A wooden box with her father's initials carved into the lid. Her fingers traced the letters before lifting the latch. Inside, manila folders held ranch records, cattle sales, feed bills, property deeds. All the paperwork of a working man trying to make an honest living. Eden sorted through them until her fingers found something different. A leather ledger bound with string. The cover was unmarked, but when she opened it, Sheriff Calloway's handwriting stared back at her. Cattle bought from Hank Murphy, $200. Land. Transfer fee, $50. Payment. To Judge Morrison, $100. Eden's breath caught. Page after page of transactions, money changing hands, favors traded, a whole network of corruption spelled out in blue ink. She flipped to the final entries, her heart hammering against her ribs. Eden's father knew too much. Problem solved. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Her hands shook so hard she almost dropped the ledger. At the bottom of the page, a date. The same date her father died. The same date Sheriff Calloway pulled that trigger and called it justice. Eden pressed the ledger against her chest and let the tears fall. 17 years of wondering if her father really was innocent. 17 years of doubt and guilt and sleepless nights. Now she had proof. Now she had everything she needed to destroy the man who destroyed her family. Eden's truck kicked up dust clouds on the highway leading to the state capitol. The leather ledger sat on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. 3 hours of driving gave her time to practice what she'd say, but her hands still shook on the steering wheel. This was it. No turning back now. The government building rose from the city center like a marble monument to power. Eden parked and walked through glass doors into a world of polished floors and echoing footsteps. Men in expensive suits hurried past carrying briefcases. Women in heels clicked across the lobby. None of them looked like they'd ever seen dirt under their fingernails. Catherine Vance stood at the end of a long hallway, studying files outside the prosecutor's office. She looked younger than Eden expected, maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back and sharp eyes that missed nothing. The governor's daughter, but she'd earned her position the hard way. Miss Vance, Catherine looked up from her papers. You're Eden Murphy. I got your message. Thank you for seeing me. Walk with me. They moved into Catherine's office. Windows overlooked the city, but Eden kept her focus on the woman across the desk. My father was murdered by Sheriff Calloway. That's a serious accusation. I have proof. What kind of proof? Eden opened her bag and pulled out the ledger. Her fingers trembled as she slid it across the polished desk. Catherine's manicured hands opened the cover carefully, like she was handling evidence. The prosecutor's face changed as she read. Her eyebrows drew together. Her lips pressed into a thin line. She flipped through pages faster, absorbing the corruption laid out in Calloway's own handwriting. Where did you find this? My grandmother's attic. And you're certain this is Calloway's writing? I've seen it before. On the report he filed the day he killed my father. Catherine closed the ledger and looked directly at Eden. For the first time in 17 years, someone with real power was listening. The courthouse doors stood unlocked after midnight. Eden slipped inside like a shadow, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. Moonlight poured through tall windows, casting long silver rectangles across the wooden floor. The building felt different in the darkness, older, more honest about the secrets it held. She walked to the main courtroom where the public benches faced the judge's chair. This was where she'd sat as a 12-year-old girl, watching Sheriff Calloway lie under oath about her father's death. Self-defense, he'd called it. Necessary force. The jury believed every word. Eden sat on the same bench, in the same spot. The wood was warm under her hands, like it remembered her touch. She closed her eyes and listened to the silence. But it wasn't really silent. Whispers seemed to drift from the corners of the room, voices she couldn't quite make out. The Murphy family wasn't the first. Galloway had been sheriff for 30 years, and power like his always left bodies in its wake. Other families destroyed, other children left orphaned. Their voices seemed to gather in the courthouse darkness, seeking justice that never came. Papa? Her voice sounded small in the vast room. The wind outside picked up, rattling the old windows like fingers drumming against glass. It was the only answer she'd ever get from him, but somehow it felt like enough. I'm going to finish this. The words echoed off the walls and came back to her stronger. A promise made in the same place where justice had been denied. Eden stood and walked toward the front of the courtroom, where Galloway would soon sit in shackles instead of behind a badge. A door creaked somewhere deeper in the building. Eden froze, listening. The sound came again, slow and deliberate. Someone else was here. Someone who didn't want to be seen. Eden moved toward the sound, her heart hammering. The hallway stretched ahead into shadow. Another creak, closer now. Footsteps on old wood. She wasn't alone in this place of ghosts and broken promises. Someone had followed her here, and they were getting closer. Sheriff Galloway's office felt smaller tonight. He'd locked both doors and drawn the blinds, but safety was an illusion now. His hands shook as he opened the desk drawer and pulled out his service weapon. The bullets clicked against each other as he loaded the cylinder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each one was a prayer that wouldn't be answered. The courthouse had been empty when he arrived. He checked every hallway, every closet, every shadow where someone might hide. But empty didn't mean safe. Not anymore. Someone was coming for him. He could feel it in his bones like an old man feels rain. A figure appeared in his doorway. Eden Murphy stood there like a ghost, materialized from 17 years of guilt. She looked nothing like the 12-year-old girl who'd sat bleeding on the courthouse steps, but her eyes were the same. Dark, knowing, hungry for justice. You remember me now? I don't know what you're talking about. His voice cracked like a teenage boy's. The gun felt heavy in his lap, but he couldn't lift it. Gooden pointed at her. Not again. The girl on the courthouse steps. That was a long time ago. Not long enough. Eden stepped into the room, and Galloway saw movement behind her. Catherine Vance emerged from the shadows like judgment itself, a folded paper in her manicured hand. Sheriff Galloway, you're under arrest. Catherine's voice cut through the silence like a blade. She unfolded the warrant and held it where he could see the official seal, murder in the first degree. Corruption of public office, conspiracy to commit fraud. Galloway's gun clattered to the floor. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. After 30 years of wearing the badge, his time was finally up. Eden's truck pulled into the overgrown driveway for the first time in 17 years. Weeds pushed through the gravel. The house stood empty, windows dark like dead eyes. Paint peeled from the siding in long strips that fluttered in the evening breeze. Everything looked smaller than she remembered, but the porch looked exactly the same. She walked up the wooden steps slowly. Each board groaned under her weight. The front door hung crooked on its hinges, but Eden wasn't going inside. She wasn't here for the house. She was here for the stains. They were still there, faint brown marks on the weathered wood where her father's blood had soaked in. 17 years of rain and sun had faded them, but they'd never completely disappeared. Some things leave marks that last forever. Eden knelt on the porch and pressed her palm against the stain. The wood felt rough and warm under her hand. For the first time since she was 12 years old, tears came. Not the angry tears she'd expected, but something deeper. Relief, release, the kind of crying that empties you out and fills you up at the same time. I kept my promise. Papa, her voice broke on the words. Thunder rolled across the sky in the distance, low and rumbling like an old man's voice answering her. Justice came slow, But it came. The first raindrops hit the porch roof with soft pattering sounds. Eden stayed kneeling, letting the tears fall. Behind her, a car door slammed. Footsteps approached across the gravel. "Eden?" Catherine's voice was gentle. The prosecutor climbed the porch steps and stood beside her, not saying anything else, just being present, being witness to the end of a long road. The rain came harder now, drumming on the roof and washing across the porch boards. Eden watched the water flow over the old stains, carrying away 17 years of dried blood. When she finally stood up, the wood looked clean. The courthouse felt different with Sheriff Calloway sitting in shackles. Eden sat in the front row, watching the man who destroyed her family shuffle into the defendant's chair. His hands were cuffed behind his back. His uniform looked wrinkled and too big for his shrinking frame. The silver badge still caught the light, but now it looked more like a target than a symbol of authority. Catherine stood at the prosecutor's table, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The charges echoed off the same walls where Calloway had once testified as a hero: murder in the first degree, corruption of public office, conspiracy to commit fraud. Each charge hit like a hammer blow. Calloway's lawyer whispered something in his ear, but the old sheriff shook his head. He turned to look directly at Eden, his eyes holding the same coldness she remembered from 17 years ago. "I was protecting this town." From what? Catherine's question hung in the air. Calloway's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "From people like your father." Eden stood up, her voice carrying across the courtroom. "My father was innocent. Innocence is a luxury in this business." "What business?" "Murder? Justice. Real justice. Not this courthouse theater." The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. "That's enough." Two bailiffs moved toward Calloway. One reached for the badge pinned to his shirt. Calloway tried to pull away, but the shackles held him in place. The bailiff's fingers worked the pin loose. Eden watched the silver badge come free from the uniform, watched it disappear into an evidence bag. 30 years of corrupt power ended with that simple gesture. Sheriff Calloway was just another criminal now, just another old man in handcuffs facing the consequences of his choices. As they led him away, Calloway looked back one last time. Not at Catherine or the judge or the packed courtroom. He'd looked at Eden. The 12-year-old girl he'd tried to silence was now the woman who'd destroyed him. She met his gaze without flinching. Justice had finally come home. The cemetery sat on a hill overlooking the town. Eden knelt beside her father's grave, fresh wildflowers in her hands. The headstone looked smaller than she remembered, weathered by 17 years of rain and wind. Below the name and dates, someone had carved the word innocent in rough letters. Grandmother's work, most likely. Eden arranged the flowers carefully, making sure they wouldn't blow away. "The town is clean now, Papa." Her voice was steady, peaceful for the first time in years. A warm breeze picked up her words and carried them across the fields where her father used to work cattle. "Catherine is the new sheriff. She'll do right. The trial was over. Calloway would die in prison, his corruption exposed for everyone to see." Judge Morrison had resigned in disgrace. 3 other officials faced charges. The whole network was crumbling like a house built on rotten wood. In the distance, children's laughter echoed from the schoolyard. They played in the afternoon sun without fear, their parents no longer worried about corrupt lawmen and crooked judges. The town was healing slowly but surely. Eden touched the headstone one last time and stood up. For the first time since she was 12 years old, she allowed herself to smile. Justice had been served. Her father could finally rest in peace, and so could she.